I must say that as I started to explore with the family from FAN and learn more and more about substance abuse and about some of the issues that are impacting our community, I was intrigued. As an educator with about 27 years of experience, I didn't know all that I've come to learn probably over the past about 3 to 4 months. So I'm grateful for that knowledge. But with that knowledge, we want to make sure that we don't hoard that information, but that we share it with our school community. So, but as we get started, I want to start off first of all by thanking our board president, David Cox. If you can just wave at us or stand up, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. You all can clap for him. Thanks so much. Also, our superintendent, Dr. John Dignity, is here with us on this evening. All right, so the hall sweep is not going so great. And we've all, been there as educators. We're good at these hall sweeps. Get them in class. Get them in class. But once again, we're just grateful for this evening, and we want to welcome you all. But on tonight, we're going to, we've got a wonderful evening planned and in store for everyone. We're going to, first of all, hear from our speaker, who is David Clayton. I'm going to talk a little bit more about him, but then also we're going to hear from our panel. So I'm just going to introduce our panel before we get going. Once again, David Clayton. There we go. Mr. Bob Davis. Judge Laura Mack is here with us, and then Officer Sermon, and then our own, the illustrious Mr. John Messick. So you can all clap for them too. Thank you so much. All right, so with no further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our lead speaker, and then we'll have a panel, a discussion after that, and then we'll keep the program moving from there. Our speaker is David Clayton. David Clayton is the Program Director for Harmless, an initiative focused on harm reduction for families against narcotics. Recently, through a partnership with the Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine, David created Macomb Street Medicine in collaboration with Harmless. The medical team, consisting of medical students and doctors, assists people in need by offering on-the-spot medical treatment. They provide such things as wound care, basic needs assessment, harm reduction supplies, and a direct linkage to medical care. Clayton also serves as the Vice President of MyCare Health Center, a federally qualified health center, and part of the MDHH Opioid Health Home. So with no further ado, let's receive Speaker David Clayton.
Thank you, everybody. Again, my name is David Clayton, and I'm the Program Director for Harmless. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. In my perfect world, it doesn't exist. This room would be full, and there'd be standing room only, because that's how important the topic is that we're all here today to discuss. A little bit more about me. On top of being the Program Director for Harmless, I've been with Families Against Narcotics for about 10 years now. I started off as a person that was new to recovery, and we would go out and, FAN's mission at the time, which still really is to utilize real people with real stories to help spread awareness and erase the stigma associated with substance use disorder. I was 3 months sober at the time, and I went to a FAN meeting down in Macomb, and what I saw there was something that I didn't see at any other type of meeting or forum that I had went to. I saw a lot of different diversity at that meeting. I saw a lot of people from different walks of life, such as parents and siblings, and parents that were mourning the loss of a child, parents who were celebrating a child's recovery, judges, police officers, defense attorneys. And what I saw there was I saw a community coming together that really wanted to make a difference in what was going on. Just a really brief history of Families Against Narcotics. We started our organization almost 17 years ago now, down in Macomb County in the town of Fraser, and it was a result of 2 fatal heroin overdoses that happened within a few weeks of each other. At that time, we weren't dealing with the current mess that we're in right now, but what happened was there were some families that came together that really wanted to make a difference, and they wanted to make a change, and essentially that was the very first Families Against Narcotics meetings. So I guess a little bit more about me, which I really don't like to talk a whole lot about myself, but I guess that's what I'm here to do today. As I said, I am a person in long-term recovery. I was a daily injection drug user for about 9 years. A lot of times people always want to ask, well, what happened and where'd you grow up and what'd you do? I grew up from a very good home. And I really, sometimes today we hear so often about the good kid, good home, injury, painkillers, heroin, and that's kind of how it goes. And my story wasn't really like that. However, I did grow up in a good home with 2 loving parents. I was a baseball player. I was a first-team All-State shortstop at junior and senior year of high school. Accepted a full-ride scholarship to a Division I university, and really kind of embraced the party lifestyle when I got into college. And that took a stronghold on me. It was a lot of binge drinking. It was a lot of cocaine use. And within 5.5 months of my freshman year of college, I just kind of walked away from everything from school and ended up having my scholarship revoked, and I was kicked out of college effective immediately. Moving back home, it was a really strange time because when I moved back home, I linked up with a lot of friends that I was running with that really kind of weren't going on the right direction. And this is around 2004, and Oxycontin had really kind of hit the streets of where I was from. And one by one, all my friends became addicted to Oxycontin. I quickly followed. By 19 years old, I was deeply addicted to Oxycontin. And then kind of, if you know the history of Oxycontin, it became heavily regulated. We couldn't get it anymore. Basic economics happened, supply and demand. Supply went down, demand goes high, prices go high, and a dark cloud rolled over our city, and one by one, everybody became addicted to heroin. By 20 years old, I was addicted to heroin. 21, I was injecting heroin. And became a daily injection drug user pretty much instantaneously. And then spent from 20 to 28, I spent most of those years incarcerated inside the various Macomb, Wayne, and Oakland County jails. Through those 8 years, I was either incarcerated in a treatment center, on the streets, or in a psychiatric hospital. That was the routine of that. With that going, I was heavily in the criminal justice system. I was a habitual felon by the time I was 24 years old. And the legal system and medically backed research has 2 places where people like myself go. That's either in the judicial system, the criminal justice system, or we're dead. That's pretty much where that ends. And back on, I had survived multiple overdoses. I'm a successful recipient of the life-saving drug naloxone, so if you do not carry naloxone, I highly encourage that you do. And by 28 years old, things came crashing down, and I really wasn't sure what was going to happen. September 23rd of 2013 was the day that I woke up severely addicted to heroin, cocaine, Xanax, and alcohol, living in a rusted minivan that barely even started. And that was the day that I had plotted that I was going to end my own life. What ended up happening that day, however, instead was I was in a house that I shouldn't have been in, that was being watched, and I was picked up in a multi-jurisdiction raid, and I was arrested. I had 2 felony warrants for my arrest at the time, and I was taken back to jail. Back in front of a judge, I was facing 6.5 to 15 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections, and that's kind of where people like me go. That's what the judge said. People like you go to prison. By that time, there was a lot of different things that were happening, and I'm not the first to state this. Every law enforcement officer that I've talked to, every judge that I've talked to, will all agree on the same thing, that you're not going to arrest your way out of a problem. You're not going to incarcerate your way out of a problem. At that time, there was these things that I had found out called specialty courts, like your drug courts or sobriety courts, and I found out that if I got put into one of these specialty courts, that they were going to send me to prison. And that was pretty much the biggest thing of it. Incarceration at the time did not scare me. It was the time for me to kind of lay down and kind of get off the streets. And I asked for if I can get sentenced to a drug court instead, which they happily obliged to. There was a lot of kicking and screaming involved in all that. The prosecuting attorney at that time called me a hopeless, helpless drug addict who my only resolution would be long-term incarceration, which I highly respectfully disagree with him, which they frown upon in the court of law, I find out. But what ended up happening was they put me into this drug court. Drug court sent me back to my 5th treatment center. I successfully complete treatment in 21 days, and that was the first time I had ever successfully completed treatment. And I get out of treatment, and what I have on me are the clothes that I got arrested in, a bag full of clothes the treatment center gave me, a half a sheet of paper with 5 numbers to local area homeless shelters, and 4 poke-out cigarettes that I took from the ashtray outside the treatment center. Not knowing where I was going to go or what I was going to do, I'm a figure it out later kind of guy. I'm a survivor. I can do this on my own. You know, and it was a time where I was just like, I really don't know what I'm going to do. You know, knowing that I didn't want to go move into a homeless shelter because most of them were all full at that time, I was guided my way into my first recovery home. I had nothing, as I had mentioned to you. I call my case manager at drug court and I tell her 3 simple words, very, very simple words, and that was, I need money, which she said, don't we all? And I said, well, listen, I got somewhere to live, but I don't have any money to get there. And ironically enough, the drug court that I was in had its own nonprofit, and this drug court wrote a check for $400 to this recovery home that paid 1 month's of rent. That 1 month of rent was able to get me into this home to where I had rules and curfews and chores and you know, all these things I had to follow. And I ended up finding, I was in an outpatient group, I found a job, you know, bussing tables, and then I started, one day somebody called off work and they said, can you wait tables? I said, yeah. I waited these tables. But what happened was these guys in the home that I was living in, they told me that I had to go to these things. These things that they said I had to go to was where they sent me when I was 19 years old, when I was 21, 22, 24, 27, and again at 28. And I was back in the rooms of, similar to this, with people that are in recovery that were you know, trying to find their way as well. At that thing that I went to, I was able to find a group of people that were able to kind of help me and told me a lot of different things, you know, things that I didn't have to really ever, you know, I didn't have to live that way anymore. I didn't have to do the things I once did. And I just started following these guys like it was like my job. And one of them gave me a job. One of them showed me kind of, you know, how to manage money, how to be respectful, how to be accountable. You know, they asked me a lot of questions, and I don't answer questions because I grew up in an environment that you don't answer questions because whatever you say, they can use against you. And that's just what I did. And, you know, but I find that when he asked me a question and told me I didn't have to answer it, you know, I like those kind of questions because every time that I was interrogated, I'm a no statement kind of guy. And I ended up, which I know you guys, law enforcement, you guys hate that. But what ended up happening was this guy asked me a question. He said, do you ever remember the last day that you ever drank or used drugs? I didn't know what he was talking about, and he told me to think about it, and then if I do remember it, don't ever forget it. And I do remember that day. The day was September 23rd of 2013, which means for me that this past September I celebrated 10 years of sobriety, and it wasn't really easy. It wasn't easy at all, you know, but I remember getting involved with Families Against Narcotics at 3 months sober, like I said, and they said, hey, we go to these schools and we talk to these kids, and I was like, that sounds like something cool, I can do that, and I went and I did, you know, and then I took over that program, and then I was like, I got invited to speak at Michigan State, and then I started doing medical conferences, and since then I was an outreach coordinator, and I've trained everybody around the state of Michigan and across the Midwest and some even farther, everywhere from local law enforcement to FBI, Homeland Security, DEA, medical conferences, court conferences, you name it, I probably have spoken at it. You know, and with that, you know, a lot of things have changed. Life really, really changed. You know, I was able to become an outreach coordinator, then I was a regional director for half of FAN's chapters, and then about 3 years ago I developed a harm reduction program and branded it the name Harmless. And a lot of you might not know what harm reduction is, that's okay. Some of you might hear the word harm reduction, you'll say, I know exactly what you do. You run a needle exchange and you enable people to continue to use drugs. And while I understand why people would say that, what we do is we understand, we follow 8 principles of harm reduction, and we accept, for better or worse, that illicit and illicit drug use is a part of our world. How many people agree with that? That legal and illegal drug use is happening, right? Awesome. How many of you people in here think that people will continue to use drugs whether they have access to sterile supplies or not? Raise your hand. Exactly. So our whole focus is on reducing harm while these uses continue. And I work in the thick of people who are still using drugs. Because FAN has so many amazing programs. We have programs for people who are ready for treatment, who are ready for peer recovery services, who are ready for naloxone trainings and sober living scholarships. And we were an organization that kept saying, we're there for you, we're there for you, we're there for you. And then I said, well, are we really there for everybody? Because we're not. Because there's still a population that goes unforgotten, and that is the ones that are still using drugs. And they're people too. And I know for myself, I never used drugs sterilely. I was, somebody who just kind of lived recklessly, and I felt no one cared about me. And everybody would say, you should go to treatment, you should do this, and you should do that. And we come at it from a very non-judgmental perspective, and we operate in an amazing capacity. Harm reduction has really become mainstreamed over the years. It's been a thing for decades and decades and decades, but really in the forefront of kind of what we're seeing right now, which is pretty incredible. We operate out of a mobile unit, so we're working right there with them, right as it's happening. And in the 10 years that I've been doing this, this is where I feel the most impact. This is where I feel the most connected, because I understand what it's exactly like. When I go out there, which I don't go out anymore, I'm really just a glorified secretary now, because I have an amazing staff that's behind me. But they're the ones that are out there in the trenches helping those individuals. But when I was out there, it was really cool, because they would say, they would see that I started this program, and it gave them a glimpse of hope that one day maybe they can do something like that as well, and just to really care about people. And since then, life has really changed for me. I'm no longer a habitual felon. I was able to go through the process, and I have a completely clean slate due to the clean slate program. Yeah, and so that's pretty cool. Still can't get into Canada, but that's all right. I'm engaged to be married. I'm getting married in about 10 months. Life today, really has it. But when we're seeing things like 113,000 people every single day dying as a direct result of a drug overdose, this tells me that there's a lot more work that needs to be done. And I know that people like myself and all the people that are at FAN are doing everything that we can to help these individuals. And I see a lot of familiar faces in this room, and I see people that are really out there doing the work for people in recovery, no matter where they are. And for me, I can only speak on behalf of myself, but I know that, what I've been doing, people say you're just spinning your wheels, and I do it for a lot of different reasons, but the main reason is because I'm sick and tired of seeing my friends die. I've lost more people than I can ever care to admit. And that's really the biggest reason why. It's because everybody's worth something, and no one needs to be forgotten, and no one ever needs to struggle in silence, because there's such a massive stigma surrounding substance use disorder as a whole. So on behalf of myself and FAN and all of you for inviting me here to share with you today, I'm not even quite sure what I just said. I just decompressed because it took me almost 2 hours to drive here, and I was stuck in traffic forever. But there's no other thing that I'd rather do when I get the opportunity to share with a bunch of strangers about what it is that I did, and I do that so the next person doesn't have to struggle in silence as well. So thank you all for being here.
Come on, thank you. Let's give him another round of applause. I'm an old school just church boy, and we have a saying in the church. We say, you don't look like what you've been through. And I would definitely say that about David in terms of just your recovery and your sharing with us and being so transparent. We truly appreciate you taking the time to do that. So at this time, once again, I just want to reiterate that we're here on behalf of Wayne-Westland Community Schools and also FAN, Families Against Narcotics. But we want to introduce our panel to you. And we want you all to, once again, say your name and tell us a little bit about your background as well. So we heard from David and so on the other one. So we'll pass it over to Bob.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. Before I start, I would like to ask a couple questions of everybody out there, because we have a diverse audience here. Is anybody in recovery here? Okay. Is any parent here that might have a child or a friend, a brother or a sister that maybe is going through some kind of addiction? Okay, good. We got a few people. So we got quite a diverse audience here. My journey and my wife's journey started with our daughter, who had a very, very similar story to David here. And I don't have enough time to go into it. So the good news is she made it, like David. She made it. It was 10 years of up and downs and highs and lows for her mom and me, as well as her. I mean, she saw the police department a number of times. She spent time in the jails. So, and here, you know, most parents never think their kid's going to become an addict, okay? Nobody wants to be an addict. Let me tell you that. When you're born, no one wants to be an addict. But it happens for various reasons. And then, of course, like David, the drugs are getting, you know, more harming and more prevalent out there. So the point is, she went through all that for 10 years, and when she made it out of the sobriety court in Washtenaw County, she went through a 2-year program, and she did it in 18 months. She had a mission. It finally sunk in, you know, and we'll talk about all these different things that are out there to help people, but actually, not much will help until that person decides on their own. And this is my perspective as a parent. No, you know, they will not want to do it until they decide in their own mind that they want to try to get into recovery. That's when the work begins. Okay. To me, the recovery part's harder. I don't know if that's true, but when you're on drugs, it's got to be easier to get through life, you know, versus in recovery where you're going. And my daughter followed all the steps, all the recommendations. I mean, she went to all the AA meetings. She went to all these meetings, and she did Zoom meetings with people in her recovery group. She was in Ann Arbor, fortunately, where there's a big recovery group in Ann Arbor. So community makes a big difference when people are trying to get into recovery. I would say, in the end of that story with her, she got her master's degree in social work. She's a peer recovery coach. She's now executive director of the Michigan Action Addiction Network.
Come see my table.
I didn't get your card. So anyway, she's married, we have a grandson now. So that end of that story is positive, and like David's positive. And I don't know how much time I got to talk here, but I want to bring up FANS Stronger Together group, okay? It's for families and parents and grandparents or whatever, that someone in their family is going through this journey. And it's a long journey. And I always tell people, the 2 things I've learned during this is, one, it's a brain disease, okay? So depends how your brain's wired, you know. You might try a drug and, no, I can't do that, or you might say, that's great, let's do something else. So it's a brain disease to me, and it's a family disease. You people here that are here because you got family, right? You got problems. So you're going to be with this until they get into the recovery program. And then, like I say, recovery, even to me, is much harder. So I guess that's all I'll say for now. I don't want to take too much time. But parents, there's so much more help out there than when my wife and I went through this. We didn't really have many resources. But in the last 10 or so years, there's been tremendous resources available. And doing these kind of community events for schools, I agree with David. It should be packed, you know. So anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Judge Mack.
Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I'm Judge Laura Mack. I was the district judge in the city of Wayne for 16 years, 2004 to 2020. And during my time as a district judge, I dealt with addiction every single day. If you took addiction and mental health issues out of the criminal docket, it'd be reduced by at least 60%. So yes, I agree, court and death really are the 2 ultimate consequences of drug use and drug abuse. The reason I'm here today to talk about it is because my path to becoming a lawyer and a judge was the result of my first husband. I was married to him from 1974 to 1984. We had a child together. I divorced him because he became addicted to cocaine in 1983. He spiraled downward. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't help him. I had to get out with my son to save myself. I actually reconciled with him 2 years later and thought I could help him. And he got high and assaulted me, and I decided to press charges. And he had been deluding himself up until that point. He was functioning, he was working, he was addicted to cocaine, but he was able to keep his life going in a certain sense. When I pressed charges, he had to face the consequences, and he actually got clean for a whole year. The bad news is that after the year was up, and he came back to me, because he went through NA, and he came to me and told me that I had saved his life by pressing charges. After the year was up, he went back to it and ended up being murdered by a drug dealer, and left my son, without a father. And I made the decision at that point to go back to school, become a lawyer, and then I met my husband, who's a probate judge, and he talked me into becoming a district judge, where I got the opportunity to meet people who were like my ex-husband every single day. And I realized that I was saving their lives by putting them on probation and by making them drug test. And I actually started a treatment court. It wasn't a drug court, but it was a mental health court. But mental health and substance abuse go hand in hand. They go together. If you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have personality problems, you are way more likely to become addicted to substances. And I think that's something important for parents and family members to keep in mind. If you're watching your children, they're more susceptible to it if they have these other problems. And so, I experienced what David Clayton and your daughter experienced to some extent, being able to get people on the right path. But it's a very tough thing, and I leapt at the opportunity to join FAN in 2017 because it was a real opportunity to really help people, to give them resources, to give them peer support specialists, to give money for recovery home, their first couple weeks in recovery homes. These are the kinds of things that FAN does, and I was able, the courts can only do so much. We don't have the money to do some of these things. So FAN really feels a huge need in the community, and I'm available to answer questions. I know I don't have a lot of time, so if you have any questions, I'm here.
Hello everyone, thanks for coming. I'm Officer Sermon. I'm the Schools Resource Officer at Memorial High School. I spent a lot of time in the military. During my time, I've seen a lot of my friends become addicted to narcotics, alcohol, and I've seen what it did to their lives. And I vowed to myself I would never allow that to happen to me. I lost my oldest friend. He became an alcoholic, and then shortly after he became a cop, he ended up essentially becoming so bad that he ended up passing away. And I just try to help everyone I meet in this profession. That's why I got into it. We at the Wayne Police Department, we take addiction very seriously. Over this past year, we developed this program where we have officers going out and servicing people that have an addiction. We provide them resources just so they know that they're not alone. Because like the other panelists said, they have to want to get the help, and we see that, and we go out and try to help them to make sure they're not alone. And that's why I love the Wayne Police Department. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is John Bessick. I'm the Director of Student Services for Wayne-Westland Schools. When Amanda asked me to do my bio, and I looked, and it was 35 years in education, which my son says makes me really old. Interesting, though, the thing is that I started off in a private school in Birmingham and worked 12, 13 years there, and then came to Wayne-Westland Schools. The one thing that I realized, though, in that time is that drug use, drug addiction doesn't have any socioeconomic boundaries. It doesn't matter if you come from a very affluent district, a very affluent community, or a very poor community. And notice that in no matter what job I've held, the key is awareness. And I think as I'm sitting here, and Officer Sermon and I are in this end, we're in the part about we're the things that when people do something wrong, they see us. The power comes from the people down at the other end who can have this firsthand experience with it. I'm listening to David Clayton and I'm thinking, he went through just terrible times, but now I think most of us are sitting here and we're saying, here's a man we respect and admire. And he said he spoke for about 22 minutes. And he said he just spoke off the cuff. Those 22 minutes, I think, would make more difference to our parents and our students in the schools than anything that either one of us could say. So. And I notice Mr. Beebe's giving me the evil eye there, so we have a series of questions to get to. That's okay. I have 6 older sisters. I know when my time is up. I'm always at the end.
So what we want to do, though, is open up the conversation for questions. And so what I'm going to do is, first of all, if anyone in the audience has a question, first of all, we want you all to know also we're taping, but our tape is only on our panel. You're not on the you're not on the filming. But I'm going to pass this microphone over to Amanda Fawnin, and then we're going to take questions from the audience, and she'll come to you with your question, and we'll continue the program from there.
Hello everyone, my name is Jermaine Atkins and I'm a person in recovery and I'm also very connected to a lot of people there at that table. And one thing that I've realized is that the people that are passionate about working in the recovery community, they all know each other. And if they don't know each other, eventually they do know each other because it's a small amount of people doing a large amount of work. So with that being said, when it comes to resources, Dave, I know that you said that along with your harm reduction program, you have a lot of resources that are available to people whenever they are or become ready to make a change. And I've seen on the news or heard or seen firsthand in other cities where some municipalities may try to maybe not prosecute or decriminalize the actions associated with drug addiction, and they call it a failure. But one thing that I have noticed is that in a lot of those municipalities, they are really lacking in the social services aspect of it. They don't have the resources available when people are ready to make a change. So from your perspective, how does a person go about doing things the right way, like you have done, as far as setting up the resources before you come into contact with the people that are in active addiction? Is there a first step or maybe a second step to getting that process running smoothly the way that I know you have?
Jermaine gave me a lot of credit. I honestly had no idea what I was even doing. I'm just kind of like an ask forgiveness for later kind of guy. And I knew that something needed to be done. And I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and start doing it. But I would just kind of focus on like the full continuum of what substance use is, from kind of harm reduction to like restoration, and just seeing, and sometimes, getting people on board with what I'm doing is kind of difficult, but when you can get people, sometimes it's just getting folks on board with carrying naloxone, or, getting peer recovery services, embracing your peer recovery services, and I encourage people that are in recovery to utilize your voice, because those are the ones that are the loudest. And we have to be the change that we want to see. But I do know that sometimes people are afraid of change. They hate change and they hate the way things are. and it's kind of like this gray area of what they're gonna do. And you know, a lot of time, I do know that there are different, you know, departments and courts that are across the state that just don't, you know, embrace naloxone or peer recovery services, and because you know, it's a lot of stigma surrounding it, right? There's a lot of stigma that surrounds substance use, so it's kind of like, all right, well, how do we embrace this? How do we create these programs? And as my buddy down here said, you know, Wayne is doing something. They're doing something about it, right? And there can always be something more to do as well. So it's really just kind of getting in and having your local stakeholders, you know, join these conversations and saying, like, this is what it takes to change. Because they'll understand why it's people like you and I that want to make change, because we're like, well, we lived it, we want to do that. But when you got other people like officers and judges that are like, yeah, we agree the same, they're like, oh, okay. And then unfortunately, a lot of their words hold a little bit more weight, because they're like, I get why you're passionate about it. But when you start getting local people together, communities, it takes a community to bind together to make a difference. And I think that's where we can start. And I know that myself and other people at FAN will, you know, help launch these programs, whether that be diversion programs, peer recovery programs, harm reduction programs, or just linking them into your area. Community resources are the best thing a community has, but community resources are only good to the community if the community knows about them. So if we don't have this out there and we're just holding on to these programs, we can, a lot of times people do this for PR purposes, but if you launch something, get it out there, like get it out there and let people know about it, and that's where your program will have the most impact.
Thanks.
Derek, Mike?
Yeah,
Tag on that.
absolutely.
David talked a lot about recovery. I'm going to sort of go over to the family part of this, okay? FAN started a Stronger Together group, and that's what we call it. But it's twice a month. It's usually Zoom now, but it's parents who are deeply entrenched in their children's drug abuse, deeply entrenched. They don't know what to do. They don't know who to go to. And so this Stronger Together group, when you attend this, you know, you think you're the only person that has someone in addiction. You hear all these stories of people coming in and their grandkid just died, and their, you know, nephew passed away last week, and this kid passed away. And so word has to get out more about this, but also, so the fans in the Stronger Together group, so the families come in, you know, we'll Zoom or I'll have an in-person meeting, but it's everybody who's been through this. So if you're just maybe a parent, maybe just getting into this now, you need support. You can't go on this alone, let me tell you. It was very difficult to go through this process, journey for 10 years. So you need some help. So I want to strongly recommend the Stronger Together group through FAN. All the information's out there if you go to their website. But it will give you support, help, direction, resources for your own good.
Is there another question? I don't think I can add anything to that.
I meant to hand it back to him. You want this?
Yeah, I'll take it and I'll pass it back. All right, what should a parent do if they suspect their child is using drugs or has a problem? Once again, what should a parent do if they suspect their child is using drugs or has a problem? Anybody take that?
Yeah. You want to take a stab at that, since you're a parent?
I'll say first, educate yourself, please. You know, it's hard to go to your kid and start saying, you can't do that, don't do that. Why are you doing that? Without knowing what he's doing and the effects that the drug's doing on him. And you'll notice it. I mean, you'll notice it when they don't want to go to school and their grades drop and they don't want to go with their good friends. They're hanging out with a different group of friends, you know. So the other thing I forgot to mention too for the families. You know, everybody's heard of a 12-step program, AA. FAN came up with a 12-step family recovery plan, okay? It's a family plan because, like I say, you know, the family goes down sometimes with the ship on this thing. So there's three stages for this. Stage one is acknowledging your loved one's addiction, okay? That's the first step. And then under that, we have 3 steps. The second major topic is after you acknowledge your son or loved one's addiction, you respond to your loved one's addiction and how you're going to respond. So we have steps for that. And the third stage really is healing from your loved one's addiction. And then we have like 6 steps under that. So, you know, the person in substance abuse, they have their own thing to do to get better, you know, over here. And as a family, you're over here and you have things to do as well to try to get through this.
No, that's okay.
Okay. All right, thanks. All right. Mental health and substance abuse use often go hand in hand. Please share your thoughts on this. Once again, mental health and substance abuse use often go hand in hand. Share your thoughts on this. You want to take that? Yeah.
I'd say 80% of the people in our mental health court also had a substance use disorder. Dual diagnosis, it's called. But the treatment, there's not a lot of treatment for a dual diagnosis. I mean, there are some places that treat it, but it's difficult to find. So, you know, again, if you're a parent dealing with a child with mental health issues, I strongly suggest you get some help for them. We have some great resources here, youth assistance programs in Wayne-Westland can help. GrowthWorks is a phenomenal organization that helps youth with mental health issues. I think it's best to get a jump on it early when they're young, before it becomes, you know, a terrible problem. Don't ignore the mental health issues that you see. They go hand in hand, especially in the criminal justice system. When the two occur together, you know, when I first started the mental health court, everybody had to be screened to see that they had a mental illness, and sometimes we didn't even ask them if they had if we asked them if they had a substance use disorder, they would say no. But we found out that, as I said, 80% of them did, even though they denied it. It was interesting to me that people would rather say that they had a mental health issue than they had an addiction. So there's stigma surrounding both, and they're alike in that respect. Is that there's huge stigma, and that's something that we as a society really have to work really hard on. And telling stories, and doing what we're doing, is a big step forward in reducing stigma. But you know, we're in a mental health crisis in this country. As you know, you just have to watch the news, and you can see, you know, mass shootings, and people are angry, and road rage incidents. It's an epidemic, and we really need to deal with it.
So at the Wayne Police Department, this past year, we have realized that, Judge was saying, that they go hand in hand. So what the Wayne Police Department has done, we actually have hired a social worker that after we have the initial contact with the individual, they'll review our cases, and then we'll go out with that social worker to that individual, and she provides them with services beyond what we can help with. And she helps them get into Hygera, she works with FAN, and then our recovery team, that when we go out on an overdose or things of that, they go out and services and provide contacts, help if they need it. We're a big support of Hope's Not Handcuffs. If they have a warrant out or something like that, we don't care about that. They're coming in for help. We accept that. We get them a guardian angel that helps them get into a program, and we wish them the best. It helps them get their life back on track. That's what we're after. We understand that it's a mental illness, and they're often using some sort of narcotic to help mask that. And like Your Honor said, it's that stigma that they don't like to admit that they have an addiction to a narcotic. They rather, I'm bipolar, I'm schizophrenia. They fall on that, but don't realize about the addiction part, and they typically mask that. Oh, absolutely.
Just real quick, Judge Mack mentioned a part about the mental health crisis. In our district, we'll have the occasional disciplinary hearing, and a lot of times the mental health part of it comes out during the hearing when we can identify either the student or the parent is almost crying out for assistance. And so we have Ms. Fawnin from our SEL department will be in those hearings, and she can almost immediately, working with our partners, Care Solace or Westland Youth Assistance, Wayne Youth Services, immediately get those people help. So if they understand that at that age when when their students are in school and they realize the community has those resources, I think that's really big for later on if they have other things. And once again, knowing the resources are out there is going to be huge no matter what the mental health crisis is.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So our next question, when I was an assistant principal, a lot of times we might find drugs on a student, and they would be in a backpack, or their pen would be an actual vape. So the question is, concealing and hiding drugs. Tell us what you may know about this and current trends, especially where students may hide drugs at home, in their car, etc. What can parents do to be proactive?
Especially students, they'll try to hide it anywhere, from their shoes to books. When you're a parent, I'm not a parent yet, but when you notice your kid changing, and you suspect them using drugs, they'll hide it anywhere. You just want to check their rooms, get into programs like the Wayne Youth Services or Westland Youth Services, where they do tutoring. You can drug test your kid. Just look into like the services that the community provides. But when it comes to in the schools, a big thing are the vapes, between the nicotine vapes or the marijuana vapes. I mean, I can't tell you how many kids have them these days. It's 5 in every 10 minimum. At least half of them have a vape, marijuana vape. I find them all the time in the school. But yeah, they hide them anywhere, and they try to be sneaky, like, oh, you can't search me. Sorry, but we can, especially in a school setting. But a lot of them think it's harmless, like they're doing nothing wrong, and that's why I like my job. I get to coach them and be like, no, it's doing something. It's prohibiting something, their growth, they're ruining their chances at graduating and things of that. So that's what I love about my job. I get to coach them and help them learn what's actually going on and what they're actually doing.
And he says that's what we see in the schools right now. A lot of vape pens, but it's more scary about what we don't see. Things that could be out there that again we're reactionary. We're the people that react to something like that. And that's why I think that messaging is so important to understand how serious some of those opioids are going to be.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I heard one speaker talk about a special kind of backpack that kids were asking for, where it had a special compartment that was hidden. And this was a great place for kids to hide drugs. So, the number of places are infinite. They can cut holes in drywall. My friend Lauren, her son did that. So you have to be vigilant, and you have to look everywhere. You have to search their rooms, search their backpacks, look through their books. They can hollow out books and put their drugs in there. Where there's a will, there's a way. They're going to find a way to hide it. But you're putting yourself at risk. I don't want drugs in my house. I know. If I were a parent, I would do everything I could. I'd search their clothes. I'd search their beds. I'd take the door off of their room. They should have no privacy if you suspect using drugs. Exercise your authority as a parent. And, you know, and if you have to go to juvenile court and have your child declared incorrigible, that's another route to go. You know, if it gets really bad and you can't control your child, they're sneaking out, using drugs at night. It happened with my own nephew. Went to juvenile court and was declared incorrigible, was sent away for a few months. You know, it's an option. So that's my 2 cents on that.
My 2 cents is, remember, some of these drugs are like pills. You can put those anywhere. Really, you're never going to find them. So, and those are very dangerous little guys.
Thank you all. We're going to give one more question, and then we're going to separate and go back to our tables, our resource tables, and then we'll also have the Narcan training after this. So, all right, last question. What resources are available to families who may suspect or know that their child is involved in drugs? Once again, what resources are available to families who may suspect or know that their child is involved in drugs?
I can take that for sure. I think a lot of the resources that's available, that was what we already spoke about tonight. I think, you know, the first starting with familiesagainstnarcotics.org. I know there's a lot of different people in the audience tonight too, and I'm sure that they can step off to the side and they can be the ones that can hand you all those resources that you need. I think tonight is a time where if you have any questions that are surrounding substance use that you don't understand, just to reach out to them. And I just want to ask a question, and I really want to address this topic because I think it's very important, is and you don't have to feel stupid at all if you're answering it too, but the question is, can you overdose by touching fentanyl?
No.
How many people think yes? How many people think no? Right. The answer is no, you cannot. And I want to address this because I feel like it's really important. So right now, we're seeing a lot of fentanyl that's coming all over the place. We're hearing about it every news story. We see videos of someone, you know, an officer doing a search, and they touch this, and then all of a sudden the officer passes out and goes into an overdose. And then they'll say, I just administered Narcan, and that's usually where it stops. They don't ever tell you what happened afterwards with what the levels were in their system. It's because they didn't overdose. What you're likely witnessing is what the officer's having is a panic attack. Because there is such a large fear in the way they've demonized fentanyl, it's causing this mass chaos. And what ends up happening is now, if it's out there that somebody had overdosed on fentanyl, now I'm afraid to render aid to them because now I'm afraid that I'm going to die if I go and touch them. So I can tell you this, that I've had it in my hand, I've looked at it, I've had it, pills that were crumbling apart in my hand, and I'm just fine. You would have to be in a massive wind tunnel of just like getting it severely exposed to you. And I'll also address this too, that the fentanyl-laced weed thing is another thing that's very out there that's being fearful. Unless somebody is literally rolling up pounds of marijuana in a bunch of fentanyl dust, that'd be the only way that could ever happen. If somebody ever passed away from an overdose and there was marijuana in their system, they say they died from fentanyl-laced weed, it's not a thing. And I can tell you this because I work in the very, very thick of it. So what that does is it fuels fear and it fuels stigma. And those crucial minutes of somebody overdosing are very, very important because if immediate rescue aid is not rendered, they don't have a chance to live. So if you're, you know, there was a thing where if I give somebody Narcan and the mucus from their nose gets on my fingers, oh my gosh, I can die. No, you're not going to. So please just like know that you're not going to die if you come across somebody who's overdosed and they have fentanyl on them. Unless someone just poured out a bucket of them on there and you got to swim through it, there might be a chance. But other than that, you're not going to die by being exposed to fentanyl. Thank you for my TED Talk.
Anybody else want to take that? Once again, the question of what resources are available to families who may suspect or know that their child is involved in drugs. Anybody want to?
I was just gonna. I think if you just walk down this hallway, you'll find plenty of resources. And I think Family Against Narcotics has been a tremendous organization. The people here that run it, they don't get paid. And in 6 years, they've come a long way with a lot of new programs and resources for everybody. I'll just say one more thing to parents: educate yourself, prepare for a long journey, and hope it comes out good in the end.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, youth assistance programs in Wayne-Westland are excellent. And the people that are here at Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network, I mean, they are the main source of funding for all of the community treatment providers. So they're an excellent source as well. So don't suffer through it yourself. Reach out, because there are resources, and FAN can steer you in the right direction if you reach out to us.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, we have questions?
No, okay. So you go. Wait.
Hey, everybody.
Oh.
Is this working?
Question.
Oh,
We got one more. We got one more question.
Hi, I want to direct this to David. You mentioned about fentanyl. Number one, when you come in contact with someone, you don't know for sure if it is fentanyl, number one. And number two, my background is in chemical engineering, and I keep hearing about some of these new designer drugs that you do have an issue with skin transmission. Is that just the newspaper sensationalizing?
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
good to know,
Yes.
because it's a little spooky, because they keep
Yeah.
talking about all this, well, this is out, they just touched it, you don't even have to ingest it in any sort of way.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for clearing that up.
You're welcome. For sure.
Is that on? Yeah, let me give you this one, because I think that one is. No, it's not. It's not the mics together. It's near the speakers.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. My name is Lauren Rousseau. I'm the president of the Northwest Wayne chapter of Families Against Narcotics. And I was just asked to briefly explain what Narcan is and how it works. I'm going to be doing the Narcan training at the conclusion of this part of the presentation in that room over there, if anyone is interested in being trained in how to use it and getting a free Narcan kit. Narcan is basically an opioid reversal drug. So if someone is overdosing on an opioid, you can use naloxone. The brand name is Narcan, but naloxone is the actual drug we're talking about, to reverse the opiate overdose and bring them back from the brink of death. Whether it's successful depends on the amount that they've ingested. You may need more than one dose of Narcan and that type of thing, but that's basically what Narcan is. It's available over the counter now. It's expected that and prepared for community people to use with a little nasal push button thing, so it's not particularly difficult. It can't hurt somebody. If you think somebody is maybe overdosing but you're not sure, or if they've used a different drug and they're overdosing, by using Narcan on them, you're not going to hurt them in any way. But if they're overdosing from an opioid, you'll be able to potentially save their life. So we'll talk more about that in the Narcan training in just a little bit. You know, there was one other thing I wanted to mention, if you don't mind me.
No, thank you. Yeah,
In response, you know, one of the, as was alluded to by Judge Laura Mack here, I had an experience myself with a young person who struggled with opiate addiction. I was legal guardian for this young kid who was basically my bonus son, which is why she referred to him as my son. And the one thing I want to mention with respect to that experience is, if you are struggling with a loved one who is addicted to substances, has substance use disorder, don't think you can handle it yourself. I guess that's really the point that I want to make. I was a professional person, had a career, lots of confidence in my ability to raise kids and knowing what I was going to do, and I will tell you that the experience brought me to my knees, and I made the mistake of thinking that I didn't need any help. So there are a lot of resources now that are available, support groups, as you heard Bob mention. We have family recovery coaches at FAN, and really education is key. You can't learn fast enough if you're dealing with somebody you love, who's struggling with addiction. But you definitely need to get help for yourself, because it just becomes all-consuming and incredibly painful for the person who's going through it with a loved one.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we're getting ready to close out the evening. Is there any other questions before we do? Any other comments before we close out for tonight?
If anybody want to ask anything in private, we'll stay too if you want to ask about it.
Amanda Fonin. Oh, I thought you were.
I just want to ask, Mr. Besick, are they teaching this in school for our kids? Are they teaching that as part of the education?
Are they teaching?
Substance use, the effects, all this?
To a degree, but not, obviously not in the depth that we would probably like at this time.
Oh, no, you're good.
All right, hope I'm not hogging the mic
No,
here,
you're good.
but that was such a good question. I felt like I needed to just give a little feedback. And this is really important for both you, Officer Sermon and Mr. Besick as well. Myself, Dara with Families Against Narcotics, the Northwest chapter, and GrowthWorks, that's the organization I work with. We do a lot of work with some schools in particular. We do assemblies, we talk to the health classes to give them some of the lived experience that Dave has, as well as education as far as like what drugs to look out for, like how unsafe the situation really is. However, just like Judge Mack was saying, when it comes to people that are in active addiction, how sometimes they would rather say, I have mental health problems, as opposed to saying, hey, I have a substance use issue. Sometimes when we approach schools to say, hey, would you like us to come in and talk to you guys? They would rather say they don't have a drug problem as opposed to invite someone in. I'm not saying Westland schools is this way, but sometimes the impression is that if we bring people in to talk about drugs, we're admitting that we have a drug problem in this school. And that may not be from the administration, it may be from the parents, but that issue does exist. So today, what I would like to do before we do close is to challenge everyone in this room, including Mr. Besick and Officer Sermon, to step up to the plate, go to your schools, ask for the services that are readily available in your community for people to come in and talk to your children. Ask for your schools in your district to allow people to come in and talk to your district. We have Allison here with the Michigan Recovery Action Network, who is readily available to provide these services and other types of community programs. We have Dara from Families Against Narcotics, and I'm here with GrowthWorks, along with a couple of other people from GrowthWorks and many other agencies like Robbie and other people that are ready to go talk to the kids. So the services are available, they just have to be accepted and understood that just because we address an issue, or maybe just because we don't address the issue, won't make it go away. So we need to get on top of it. And that's all I wanted to say.
There's a little one in the back.
It's too little.
Well, it's more of a statement than a question. I'll make it really, really brief. What?
Well, my goodness, they're first.
Give that little one to Mike.
You always give the kids a lot of free stuff too. So, bring it to
Change the mind.
Checking the mic.
Hello?
Hello.
What is your question?
Why do we use drugs for meds if they could kill us?
That's a smoking question. Good question. We need to make that.
In large quantities.
Big pharma.
Some people.
We're gonna ask the second question.
Why do kids use drugs at school and hide them?
We'll answer, we'll have the panel answer both of those extremely good questions. Those are good questions. Let's get out for our kids before we
You want to do it?
Okay, so drugs are very beneficial. You know, aspirin reduces fever, things like that. But the problem, you know, and we have a huge pharmaceutical industry in our country and in the world. Drugs do a lot of good. They lower blood pressure. They can reduce pain. The drugs we're talking about here, opioids mostly, are pain relievers. They relieve terrible pain. They are supposed to be used for end-of-life pain, like cancer or terrible surgery pain, you know, really bad pain. The problem was they were marketed as being non-addictive. The company that sold them back in the late 1990s, Purdue Pharma, marketed a new kind of opioid that they said wasn't addicting. But it was, meaning that once you take it, you want to take more. It does something to your brain. It's a brain disease. So most drugs are beneficial. You have to differentiate between the good ones and the bad ones. It's when drugs are misused that they become harmful. In particular, opioids, opiates, morphine, that kind of drug. Those are the ones that we're talking about that are so deadly, that people can easily overdose. They suppress your ability to breathe. And I think the other question was, why do kids hide drugs at school? Because they want to take them. They find some pleasure in taking them, and they want to, maybe they're rebelling against their parents. There may be a lot of reasons. They might make them feel better. They might be anxious, and it makes them feel better. So they know it's wrong. They know their parents wouldn't approve, so they hide them. That's a very short answer to a very complicated question. Did you want to?
Yep.
Go ahead.
So some kids actually use drugs to fit into crowds as well. And then after using the drugs, they get addicted. And then, like Judge was saying, it changes something in them, and then they keep using it and keep using it. And they start hiding it from their parents, and then they go down a rabbit hole of using different drugs at this point, because sometimes they can't get a hold of what they had before. So it's a revolving door that keeps going and going down. But a lot of kids, like especially in the school these days, for smoking, they think it's cool. Oh, my best friend's doing it, so I can do it. Or that group is doing it, so I'm gonna give it a try. So that's why a lot of kids start to get into it, because it's what's called peer pressure. Their friends are doing it, so they gotta do it. It's the new and coolest thing to them, but in all reality, it's not. It's harming them, and that's why we're here to bring light to it and hopefully prevent it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something.
Yeah, just based on what Jermaine was saying, and this is kind of along the lines of the challenging, you know, within the district. Some of the things that we're doing in other districts are helpful. We're hopeful that they will be helpful to students who get expelled for using drugs and alcohol, because right now, you know, what happens to a student when they get expelled? You know, I don't know what the policy is here, but let's just say that they get expelled for 5 to 7 days. Well, what kid that is using drugs and alcohol would love to be expelled for 5 to 7 days? Their parents are working and no one's home. There's no consequences of that, right? So one of the things that we're doing in some of the school districts is we're looking at implementing something similar to like drug court. And we know drug court works because we see, you know, great examples of that. David is a great example of that. But if you had something like that in school where the kids could come in and we, all the treatment folks here, we could be here to offer assistance in helping to educate the students on the dangers of what the path that they're going down as opposed to leaving them. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I wasn't sure if you guys were looking at anything like that, but I figure we got great key players in the room and now's the time to do it, so that's my piece.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Oh, you need to say something? Oh, good, no problem. All right, so once again, we want to thank you on behalf of the SEL department here in Wayne-Westland Community School District. We really appreciate it, and our partners at FAN. I don't want to start calling names because I'm known to get in trouble doing that, but I am so grateful to everyone who helped to put this on. And we're not discouraged at all by the attendance. I'm very pleased with it, and we're not going to stop, you know, because if one person can impact their child, impact their loved one, it was well worth it. The two young people that spoke up and had the wonderful questions, we appreciate it. We hope that this event is making a difference in your future as well. So with that being said, we're going to have the Narcan training. I'm going to participate in that on tonight. And then once again, our tables are open again. So we ask that you would once again visit the resource tables or participate in the Narcan training. And then once again, the panel will stick around to answer questions. Have a good evening.